live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show.
Welcome to the FTN Betscast for Friday, July 15th here at FTN Bets. I am fresh back from the sports betting conference in lovely Secaucus, New Jersey. So that's why we have been the last 2 days. That's why we haven't had any new podcasts come out, but we'll have a couple coming out even over the weekend to try to make up for it, as we have to get through all of the games here for our NFL team betting previews. Remember, today's podcast is brought to you by our good friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players. And now we can even play in their new over-under game. And that's what I want to talk about here today. First, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like, and you're going to pick whether they're going to go over or under their listed total. So, for example, tonight in baseball, it could be something along the lines of the number of runs someone's going to score, the number of runs a pitcher may give up, maybe the number of strikeouts a pitcher gets, or the number of hits a guy will get. Then you're going to choose an amount of money that you want to enter into that contest. And if you pick correctly, you could win anywhere from 2 times your money all the way up to 20 times your money if you go 5 out of 5 and you get them all correct. But the main reason why I like this over-under game on Sleeper, it's the only app where you could join in with all your buddies and play together. So it has a built-in group chat where you can see what I'm betting, I can see what you're betting, and we could all see what the guy who won like 2 or 3 days in a row in our group chat is betting as well. And it's insanely fun when everybody's on the same things, rooting for them and riding it out together. So stop what you're doing now, download this Sleeper app, play the new over-under game, have some fun with your friends, and make a little bit of money in the process. So on your mobile phone, you can join into our listener group over here by going to sleeper.com/FTNbets, and then Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100 automatically if you join through that link. So again, down in the description, you'll see it. Sleeper.com/FTNbets, and it automatically makes you eligible for that $100 match on your first deposit. Now, remember, there are terms and conditions that apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for those details. So let's see. Last time out, we talked about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The time before that, the Carolina Panthers. So we're going to stay with the NFC South here today, and we're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints. The Saints actually started last season on fire. They were 5-2 through the first 7 weeks of the season. Then that's when Jameis Winston's ACL injury hit. I think they lost 5 games in a row after that to be 5-7. And then they finished strong, winning 4 of the last 5 games. So they finished with a record of 9-8. They had the best record of any team that didn't make the playoffs. They were, the losers of the tiebreaker there in the NFC for the last playoff spot. This year, do we expect more or less out of the Saints? Well, let's take a look. Let's see what all the numbers are saying here. So first thing I always do is I go over and look at our win total projections that Jeff Ratcliffe put together. Jeff has them projected for 8 wins on the dot here this year, so 1 below where they were last year. DraftKings also has this number at 8, but it is juiced to the over a little bit there. It's minus 135 to the over at that 8 number, and it's plus 115 to the under there. I wouldn't touch the under there, but the over at minus 135, I don't even know if I want to play that. I feel like it's a little bit too juiced up. But it does make sense when you see the other numbers that are out there in the market. So DraftKings is the only one that has it at 8. You can get it at 8.5, which I think is pretty much the consensus number here. FanDuel has it at 8.5. BetMGM has it at 8.5. PointsBet has it at 8.5. But it is juiced down. It's even money for them to get over that 8.5, which makes sense. Like I said, Jeff is projecting them for 8. So to get to 8.5, you would probably have to get better than, 8 should be the minus 110, minus 115 number. So to get to 8.5, you probably would need to be enticed with a little bit of a better payout. So plus 100 makes sense for that to be there. Again, we only have them projected for 8. So the under is the number that I like a lot more. I would have liked to see it at minus 110. I don't really want to play it at minus 120 here, but you can get the under at minus 120 on FanDuel and BetMGM. That's the best price to play the under, which is where we are projecting it here. Unibet, Sugar House, Bet Rivers, I guess they want to be a little different. I started noticing this with them is whatever the big books have it at, if they have it at 8.5, they always either put it 1 win above or 1 win below, and then adjust the payouts on it to if it's above or below, it'll be one of them will be like plus 200 and minus 200 on the other side or something like that. That's basically the way that they've been doing it. There's a lot of screeners out there right now, and this is the reason why. You guys got to be able to understand this so you know why the numbers are there. There's a lot of screeners, a lot of tools that are being built out there in the market from the various websites. I mean, we have some on our own over at FTNBets, the prop shop and the odds calculators and everything like that. And what they do is they take all the numbers from all the sports books and they show you where the best number is. So a lot of these screeners won't show you all the numbers. They'll just show you the best number. So what a lot of these smaller books are starting to do right now are the books that don't take as much action as the DraftKings, the FanDuels of the world right now. They're starting to kind of play with the numbers a little bit to try to make them pop up in some of these screeners here. And I think that's what's starting to go on with Unibet, Sugar House, and Bet Rivers when they put their numbers here together. So they have this at 9.5 wins, which is way too high of a number. But what they did is, if you want to play the over on it, they're giving you plus 200 odds. If you want to play the under, it's minus 265. So is the number likely to come under that 9.5? Absolutely. But is it likely to come under, I don't know, 70% of the time or so, or whatever the, minus 265 is somewhere in that range? And that's really the question you have to ask yourself. And honestly, I'm not really messing with the extra numbers when they're up there. Look for the number that's a little closer to what the market is, the 8.5 that you get at FanDuel, MGM, PointsBet. That's the number you really want to be messing with here. And again, the under at minus 120 there is probably the best play, but it is a little juiced up, so I'm not really all that interested in it. One number that I do have a little bit of interest in, if you want to play the overs here, again, 10 wins probably guarantees you a playoff spot. 9 probably maybe gets you in. It's going to leave you, last year we had a couple teams that finished with 9. Some of them got in, some of them didn't get in. So I feel like 9 wins is kind of the cutoff you're looking for this year. You want to get to 10 to almost guarantee yourself a playoff spot. If you're under 9, you're probably not going to make it there. If we look at the playoff numbers for the Saints, again, the juice is a little bit high on them, but it does make sense. Yes, for them to make the playoffs is 135. Now, again, if they're going to make the playoffs guaranteed, they're going to need at least 10 wins. Maybe you just want to play the over 200, over on Unibet, the over 9.5 is plus 200. That's probably better than playing, yes, they'll make the playoffs at plus 135 on BetMGM, which is the best number you can get for that. Now, again, you are giving up, maybe the chance that they make it with 9, but I think less than half the teams that had 9 wins actually made the playoffs last year. I think there were 2 or 3 teams in each division that got knocked out with 9 wins, and only 1 or 2 in each division that made it in. So, really, you're going to need to get to that 10 number there. That's why I don't really like this. The no is the better bet here, but again, it's not really a good payout. Let's see, minus 165 MGM, minus 152 on Unibet, Bet Rivers, and Sugar House is the best place you could play. No, the New Orleans Saints will not make the playoffs. Again, if you want to play it, by all means, I don't think it's a bad number there. But I would have liked to have seen it more in like the minus 130 range before I would have gotten excited and put money on it. So anyway, let's go on and talk about the NFC South. Let's talk about the Saints' chance to win the NFC South. Really, what the Saints are going to need to win the NFC South this year is going to be probably an injury to Tom Brady. I honestly don't see any other way where they win this division. Tampa Bay is a massive favorite in this division. They're like minus 300 or so to win the division. And then the other 2 teams are both really big long shots. Carolina is around 10-1. Atlanta is like 20-25-1 in some places. So, when you look at the division here, it really is Tampa Bay's to run away with. New Orleans really is the second best team in this division, but there's a major gap between Tampa and New Orleans, just like there's probably a pretty big gap between New Orleans and Carolina as well. So, this is one of those divisions where it's going to take something freaky happening. Like I said, maybe an early season Tom Brady injury would be, the thing that would make me get excited about the Saints here. But other than that, I really don't see them winning it. If you want to play that for that early season Tom Brady injury, because again, that's the only reason to really play them to win the NFC South, plus 400 on PointsBet and FanDuel for the New Orleans Saints. That's the best number that you can get out there. It's like plus 360 to plus 380 on all the other books. So, at most you're giving up 20 or 40 basis points. But again, it is 20 or 40 basis points. So the best price, the place you want to play it, PointsBet, FanDuel, plus 400 for the Saints to win the NFC South. Saints to win the NFC overall, 22-1 is the best price we can get on that, plus 2,200. That price is available over at DraftKings. The low price is plus 1,700 on FanDuel, so 17-1 over there, 18-1 on BetMGM, 20-1 on PointsBet, SugarHouse, Unibet, and BetRivers. So again, 22-1, best price in the market for Saints to win the NFC. You can get it on DraftKings. I just don't see it happening. Like I said, I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. They're probably like a borderline playoff team this year. Taking them to win the whole NFC, probably not a good bet, not a good place to put your money. So obviously, taking them to win the Super Bowl is probably even a worse play here. That is 45-1. PointsBet, DraftKings, Unibet, SugarHouse, BetRivers all have it at 45-1. FanDuel, MGM, and Caesars all have it at 40-1. So PointsBet, DraftKings, Unibet, SugarHouse, BetRivers, the place to play it. If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, by all means, go ahead and put it down. Otherwise, I don't see why you would want to put money on this, to be honest. I just don't think it's a good bet. So now let's move on. Let's talk about some of the player props here. There are a couple interesting player props here, including Jameis Winston being one of the chalk favorites for an award. So that's going to be fun. Let's get into that here. So let's start with our boy Jameis here. Jameis only played, I think, 7 games last year before he got hurt. His numbers weren't all that great in those 7 games, to be honest. I mean, the first game of the season, I think they only threw for under 100 yards in one game, I'm pretty sure. And then I think 279 was the best he had. Yeah, 279 was the most passing yards he had. He had a couple other games where he threw for over 200, but he had more games where he threw for like a buck something, like $110, $170. Now, again, their receivers last year were nothing special, right? I think Marcus Callaway was probably the leading receiver on that team. You probably can't even name the 3 wide receivers that the Saints threw out in the 3 wide receiver set last year. And again, I'm a big football fan, and I think I would have to at least double check. I know a couple names off the top of my head, but I'm not sure which ones were on the field at the same time there. But, you know, that's the thing with this team. Like, if you look at Jameis, you know, what can you really expect for him? I mean, the projections that I'm seeing around the industry aren't all that great. They did do a lot to help him in the receiver department, though. I mean, again, Michael Thomas injury aside, he should be back at some point this year, but it's still kind of an open timetable. They did add Jarvis Landry. He is a very solid receiver, definitely somebody who's going to help out there. They did use their first-round pick to go get Chris Olave. So, I mean, there are guys that are on this team now that can make some plays where they probably didn't have guys last year that you had all that much faith in, and that's probably why they ran the ball a lot more. And Jameis's numbers weren't all that great. So he is one of the toughest guys to project this year, in my opinion, because you got to figure that, you know, now that they added some weapons, that's going to help them. You know, but again, there's also the Kamara question there, even though I think Kamara is going to play for most, if not all, of the season here. And then on top of all that, with everything else that's going on, you also have to say, okay, well, you know, this guy only played 7 games. How am I supposed to project him out when, you know, we really didn't see him? And even the games we saw him in, we didn't see peak Jameis, right? Like we saw Jameis a couple of years ago, you know, with Tampa Bay slinging the ball all over the place. Now he's more of a game manager. I don't know if that was by design because of the way things were last year, because of how things kind of worked out. So it'd be interesting to see if they open the offense up a little more this year, which I think they're going to have to do. With that being said, and the reason why I wanted to go so in depth in it is there are some pretty interesting numbers here for Jameis that I want to talk about. Jameis is the second shortest price of anybody in the NFL to win the Comeback Player of the Year award. Plus 550 is the best number you can get on him over at DraftKings. It's plus 500 at most of the other books. So again, right in line with that. DraftKings actually even has the highest price at that plus 550 there. Before you ask, yes, he is second. That is what I said. Christian McCaffrey, just to give you a little bit of a background here, Christian McCaffrey is the 3rd guy to win Comeback Player of the Year, and he's plus 7,500. So that's pretty interesting there. The favorite for Comeback Player of the Year is Derrick Henry. He's plus 400. So 4-1 on Derrick Henry. It's actually even lower than that, I think, on some other books. But I was looking on DraftKings here where I found that plus 550 on Jameis comeback, which is the best price that you could find in the market. Now, if we get to Jameis Winston, let's say, you know, let's say Thomas comes back kind of early and Landry goes in the slot and dominates and you know, really, you know, gets back to his top form. And Chris Olave, who's a first-round pick, actually lives up to the hype of being a first-round pick. You know, again, you might have a very, very good receiving core here, and maybe they decide to open things up a little more. You have Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, who's already one of the best receiving running backs. So there's a chance that Jameis could put up a monster comeback season, put up some monster yardage here, if that's the way that they decide to go with it here. Most passing yards for Jameis, plus 4,000 over on Caesars. Do I think he's going to do it? No, I don't really think he's going to do it. I mean, you're probably going to have to throw for over 5K, right? Because we had a couple quarterbacks last year, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, I think did it as well. Guys that got over 5,000 yards passing. You're going to need like 5,000 yards passing, probably 40 touchdowns. Like, you're going to have to put up numbers like that in order to win, some of these awards here this year. Maybe not comeback player of the year, but then MVP and stuff like that, which is why we didn't talk about it, because I don't really think Jameis can get there. But if he does throw for 5,000 yards, most passing yards, 40-1 on Caesars. It's only 20-1 on like Bet Rivers and Sugar House. So 33-1 on PointsBet. I mean, you're getting this at like a 25 to 50%, above market rate here right now, almost double what you can get on Bet Rivers and Sugar House. So 40-1, most passing yards, Jameis Winston. I'm not playing it. I just thought it was an interesting number that I wanted to talk about while we were talking about the Saints here. Let's see, most passing touchdowns, 50-1. Again, that's kind of interesting too there. They have some, receiving backs that can catch passes. They have, when everybody's healthy, they're going to have a pretty nice receiving core. So that could be an interesting one there for Jameis as well. Again, I don't really love these things. These are something that, maybe you drop $5 or $10 on if you got like a free bet or something like that, or, you're a big Jameis Winston fan. These are not the kind of things that you want to make your big bets, 1 unit, 2 unit bets kind of thing on. This is not something I would even put a quarter of a unit on, to be honest with you. It's more of, just something that you put a little sprinkle with. 3,500 yards passing for Jameis Winston. I do like the over on this number. Now, remember, most of these do end up under. When you look at these season totals, it's more than 2/3, more than 66% of these things do usually end up under. With that being said, this is one that I think could be over, right? Like if Jameis stays healthy for 17 games, 3,500 yards is basically a little over 200 yards per game. Now, again, remember last year, their receiving core was straight garbage. They actually avoided passing as often as they could because of that. Jameis, though, has put up big passing numbers, big passing yardage in other offenses before. So it's not like he can't do it. If you give him the weapons, again, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and throw for, 300 every game and beat Tom Brady for passing yards and get 5,500. But again, we're not asking him to. We're asking him for 3,500. If he stays healthy here, this is basically like what, 208 yards a game or something like that, 207 yards a game is going to get you to that 3,500 number. So minus 112 on FanDuel to play that. I like the over on Jameis Winston passing yards. That would be the one Jameis Winston one that I am interested in. Even if you like him for comeback player of the year, plus 550 on DraftKings is the best price. It's not enough to play him. So let's see. What should we talk about next? Running back, wide receiver. Running back, wide receiver. Let's go with wide receiver. Let's go with that rookie, Chris Olave. That's the next guy I want to talk about here. Offensive rookie of the year, 12-1 on DraftKings and Caesars. He's 10-1 on PointsBet. He's 9-1 on FanDuel, Unibet, Sugar House, and Bet Rivers. He could be the number one wide receiver in this offense from his first game of the season. Now, here's the thing that makes me a little nervous about this is, rookies normally don't do well at the beginning of the year. Even the rookies who do have like big rookies. Now, again, there are 1 or 2 exceptions, but for the most part, you tend to see the rookies start playing better towards the back end of the year. Once they kind of understand what's expected a little more and the pace of the game and, how stuff goes, they get a little more comfortable. And that's understandable, right? Like, your first couple games in the NFL, something you worked for your entire life, you're going to be a little nervy. You have to figure out the differences between, the guy who's now an accountant who was the college cornerback you were playing against last year and the guy who does this now for a living and is one of the best, 60 or 70 guys at that position in the world because he's starting for an NFL team opposite you. So, again, it's not going to be an easy transition for him to make, but he's going to be given the opportunity. I mean, the targets are going to be there. We saw a guy like Jalen Waddle last year with, 100 catches and, just monster numbers as a rookie. Jamar Chase. We've seen a lot of these guys kind of make those big jumps now right out of college. So, again, I think that's what the Saints are hoping they get here. Michael Thomas will be back at some point, which, is obviously going to affect him a little bit as well with, the upside there. 724.5 receiving yards, Chris Olave. That's the number that's out there in the market. Minus 115 is the over under there, over on points bet. You know, interesting. You go back to 2021, the leading receiver for the New Orleans Saints was Marquez Callaway, and he had 698 yards. So technically, this would mean that Chris Olave would have to be the number one receiver and would have to have more receiving yards than the guy who led the team last year. But again, I do think they're going to change the way they played around a little bit here. He does have a little more competition for targets, but you know what? This is a number I would play under just because of the way it is, but I wouldn't be shocked if he winds up going over here. They're going to give him every opportunity to. And if you're somebody out there playing fantasy football, I still think this guy's ADP is a little bit too low. So let's go. Let's talk about the last one here. The last one we're going to talk about, let's go to the running back position, Alvin Kamara. So again, for those of you who don't know, want to make sure everybody's up to date on all the craziness. He was in, I think it was Las Vegas with a bunch of his boys, and they got in a fight, and, you know, they wound up beating the heck out of somebody, which in Las Vegas, I think carries like a, you know, like a mandatory sentence is the way that I think it was explained to me, or the article that I was reading had laid it out. But here's the other thing you got to know is that, you know, we've seen situations like this before, and you guys know how the legal system works in this country. It's not like he's going to court tomorrow and is going to be in jail next Friday and he's not going to play this season. Very likely they're going to ask for this for this case to kind of have, like, you know, get an extension, have some time. What his lawyers are probably hoping to do is at the very least try to extend this until the end of the season before he has to go to court. So maybe you miss him for a few games there. Most likely you won't. People are worried about whether the NFL is going to suspend him and all that. You know, yeah, they probably will. But again, are they going to suspend him before the court case? Like, that's, you know, that's the thing you gotta think about here. Maybe he misses 3 or 4 games. Maybe he misses 6 games. Some people say, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there and all that. But there's also a chance that he just plays the entire season too. And that's what I think people are kind of discounting is it's not an automatic lock that he's going to sit out at any point during the season. He may wind up, we may not see him 2 years from now if he has to go to court and all that. But I think he's going to be able to play most of the season. And if that's going to be the case here, then we got to start looking at some of these numbers. And even in fantasy, I mean, listen, if this wasn't hanging over Alvin Kamara's head, he'd probably be a 1st or 2nd round draft pick. The fact that he's fallen in the 3rd or 4th round here, again, it's, you got to decide whether or not you believe, you know, the rumor mill on Twitter or whether or not you believe the intelligent people. What I always do when it comes to court cases is I don't want to listen to a fantasy football analyst tell me about somebody's legal jeopardy. What you do is you read the articles or you read the podcast, you listen to the podcast where they have actual lawyers on, you know, former district attorneys on, because those guys are going to tell you exactly how things are really going to go. The fantasy football analyst doesn't understand how, you know, a court of law works. Might be great if you're looking to know who to start here. Probably not the guy you want to listen to, though, when you're, you know, trying to take advice about somebody's, you know, life in legal jeopardy. But from what I'm hearing from a lot of the lawyers, Kamara is going to be playing this year. So we're going to talk about these numbers as if that's going to be the case. Offensive player of the year for Alvin Kamara, 80-1 on BetMGM. I think that number's worth a play. I mean, you look at 2 years ago, if this guy's healthy, he's one of the most dynamic running and passing threats that we have here in the league. He's had seasons where he scored monster touchdowns. He's had seasons where he had huge, you know, catch totals with a lot of receiving yards. You know, the rushing yards, this isn't a guy who's going to get like 350 carries, right? So you're not going to get the 2,000-yard season out of Alvin Kamara. But there's so many other things that he does, and he's such a big part of this offense. I don't think it's crazy. If the Saints somehow finish, you know, 13-4 and get a 1 seed, it's probably likely that Alvin Kamara had a huge year. So 80-1, probably worth a little sprinkle there if you want to throw some money on that. Again, most rushing touchdowns. Remember, he only had 4 last year, but he did have 16 in 2020. So most rushing touchdowns is not a crazy thing to look at here. 40-1 on FanDuel is the number there. That's worth a little bit of a wager. You know, you're getting 40-1 on something. I mean, you throw $25 on it, you win $1,000. So if you have a $25 free bet lying around, there are worse ways to spend it than going Alvin Kamara 40-1, especially over on FanDuel. That's where you can get the best price on that one. So there you go. That's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the FTN Betscast here at FTN Bets, sponsored by our good friends at Sleeper. Good luck today, everybody.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.